My research has very broadly looked at self-representation in media, and that involves selfies, it involves sexting, which is kind of a subgenre of selfies in a way, and it involves the ways that people represent themselves in social media and in kind of newer spaces like dating apps or hookup apps where people compose profiles in particular ways. When I was interviewing 16 and 17-year-olds about sexting, one of the questions we asked them was, when is sexting not sexting, to try and get a sense of when adult interpretations might be quite different to the ways that young people see themselves and their own activities. And they described a range of different kinds of selfies that adults might all lump in as sexting, oh my God, dangerous. But for the young people, all of these pictures served really different purposes in different contexts. So private selfies were not sexting because they were like a mirror in a sense, using the camera as a mirror. And they might be sexy, like you might be in your underwear or you might have your shirt off, but they were never intended to be shared. Even though you might have them on your phone. It was just a sense of, what do I look like? Do I look sexy? Then there were what they termed public selfies, and they were the kinds of pictures that you might send to another person or you might share on social media, but often the young people didn't see this as sexting because it wasn't saying, do I look sexy? Or do you want to flirt with me, or do you want to get with me? Or it wasn't kind of part of a sexual relationship. They were sharing a picture that might involve, being semi-naked in adult terms, but it was more saying, I got a new bra, do you like it? Or here I am at the pool in my swimming costume, but for an adult decontextualized, that's, oh my God, there's a sexy picture on your phone. But for the young people, that was what they would just term a selfie. Jill Walker-Retberg has talked about the serialization of selfies. So sometimes, the individual selfie isn't the point. It's the fact that, some people use selfies as a diary. So particularly, there's been kind of interesting studies of young people who are having mental health issues, and they might take a selfie every day because how they feel doesn't line up with how they look to the rest of the world. And so this kind of practice of self-reflection is something that helps them check in like a diary or journal process. And they might do that in a communicative way with others, or it might actually be a kind of self-reflexive, communication with the self. Like, what's happening in your head is not always the same as, external reality. And so to match them up, you might create a visual image to try and reflect or make sense of the world for yourself. Yeah, so they can be really complex. They can be a dialogue, they can be self-reflection, they can be, decoration, they can be fun, they can be all kinds of things. There's interesting kind of hits and misses in the commercialization of selfies. There's a whole Tumblr dedicated to really naff marketing campaigns using selfies, which are kind of, OMG, lol, I'm down with the kids. But then the vernacular selfie producers who are really good at it can also create a personal brand from their own process of selfie excellence, and can become micro celebrities or influencers through the fact that they're really good at looking good in selfies. They have these amazing branding strategies where my really good stuff goes on Instagram, and then my behind the scenes stuff I put on Twitter, and then, I might put something else. I might put a tutorial on YouTube on how to take a good selfie. So they've got this great kind of cross-platform strategy, which was not developed by an ad agency, was not developed by a brand manager, is part of this kind of process of people working out how social media works and what the communicative practices are that people like. And, you get likes, so you get that instant feedback, and working out how to make a career out of that. And people do really well because they're good at selfies. influencers probably still hashtag a bit, but yeah, it's not quite the same when you used to be like hashtag pretty, hashtag girl. You know, there were all these hashtags that were guaranteed to get you more likes, and people tried to game the hashtag. My students did some work on kind of hashtagging of food, and there were some very strange random hashtags being added to food posts in an attempt to game likes that had, yeah, so pretty doesn't usually describe a hamburger, but people were tagging their hamburger pretty because you wanted followers. So probably people are bored of that now, and it doesn't, yeah, gaming your hashtags doesn't have as much cred to it. I think selfies are interesting because selfies have allowed a whole broad category of people who might be in social minorities or might be in political minorities to place themselves into public debate in a way they, you know, maybe they couldn't have a presence before. And in terms of kind of sexual self-representation, I know there's a lot of testimony from gender diverse people or people who don't fit a kind of mainstream norm of prettiness or sexiness, who use selfies as a way to affirm certain aspects of their sexuality or challenge certain aspects of themselves, you know, and that is done dialogically, and especially in places like Tumblr where there are whole communities sharing selfies. And that's one of the things that I think is most interesting. It's not so much that really, I guess, you know, cliche, duck face, pretty girl on a beach, who might otherwise be in a fashion magazine. You know, there's not that much difference between the professional model and the amateur model in that sense. But, you know, the person of colour, the person with disabilities, who wouldn't otherwise be the pin-up, who plays kind of critically with pin-up culture via selfies. I think that's a really interesting space, and it's a space where people have a lot to say about their own motivations and their own rationale for doing things, and that's what I think is one of the really interesting spaces of selfie research.